The first note of our 40th anniversary rehearsal had barely settled when I opened the program and found my retirement printed inside it. How could I stop a farewell I had never agreed to without turning our anniversary into a fight between a mother and her daughter? Across the top of page 3, in gold letters, were the words, "Farewell to our founder." Beneath them, my daughter Claire was named as Riverbend Civic Chorus's next artistic director. I had never resigned. 800 programs were supposed to reach the auditorium by Saturday. 80 adult singers were already looking at me over their black folders. I had perhaps 10 seconds to choose my next action. I raised my left hand. Mateo stopped at the piano. "Close your folders, please," I said. "There is one sentence in this program I need to answer before we sing another note." The covers came together unevenly around the room. I read the farewell line aloud. Then I said, "I asked to give up 6 winter rehearsals next season. I did not retire, and I did not approve an announcement naming my successor." That was the first truth. The second arrived from the third row. Nina Foster, who had been assigned the anniversary solo, lifted her hand halfway. "Does that mean my part is still mine if I don't stand in the farewell tableau?" I looked at Claire. She was beside the conductor's stand with a pencil held across both palms. Her face did not change, but the pencil bent. "Your solo is part of the approved music," I told Nina. "It is not payment for agreeing with anyone." Claire set the pencil down. "Mom," she said, "can we not do this in front of everybody?" There are questions that sound like requests for privacy, when what they really request is silence. I knew the difference. I also knew that Claire was my daughter before she was my assistant conductor, and that I had spent most of her life trying to spare her public embarrassment. That night, sparing her would have required 80 other adults to participate in mine. "We will discuss the program privately," I said, "but everyone in this room was just asked to rehearse a farewell. They deserve to know whether it is true." No one applauded. I was grateful for that. Applause would have turned my answer into a side. The Riverbend Civic Chorus was not famous. We rehearsed in a converted school cafeteria in Bellwether Falls, Kentucky, under fluorescent lights that made every black folder look gray. Our risers had been repaired so many times that Mateo called them the archaeology of plywood. We had a 7-person volunteer board, an accompanist who could find the beginning of any measure while people were still arguing about the end, and singers who worked days as mechanics, teachers, pharmacists, bookkeepers, and one patient veterinarian. Those occupations did not disappear when rehearsal began. Harold Kim, the retired mechanic, could hear a loose riser bolt beneath a full cord. Priya Shah, who managed a dental office, always knew which section had received the revised page and which had been too polite to admit it had not. Gerald Moss delivered heating oil and judged every musical instruction by whether it could be understood in one trip. Nina Foster taught adult literacy classes and never pretended to understand a marking just to keep rehearsal moving. They were not my followers. That word would have offended them, and it would have been false. They had stayed because Riverbend gave ordinary people serious work to do together. A veterinarian listened to a custodian. A mechanic adjusted his breathing because a pharmacist across the aisle needed half a beat more. My job was to make those acts possible, then become less visible than the sound they made. That was why the program frightened me, beyond the loss of a title. If I accepted a decision merely because it had been printed beautifully, I would be teaching the whole room that participation was only decoration after authority had spoken. I had started Riverbend with 14 people when I was 28. By 68, I was no longer the only person who could lead it. That fact did not frighten me. What frightened me was having my choice rewritten as incapacity and then wrapped in gratitude so neatly that objecting would make me look ungrateful. 5 weeks earlier, Claire and I had sat at my kitchen table with next season's calendar between us. "I want 6 Wednesdays off between January and March," I had said. "All that rain, the dark drive home, then 2 hours of email after rehearsal. I'm ready to stop pretending I enjoy it." Claire had laughed. "You have never pretended to enjoy email." I slid the calendar toward her. "You could take 3 rehearsals. Mateo could lead section work for one. We could ask the board about the other 2. She had gone quiet in the way she did when she was already arranging my words into a different answer. "They need a clean transition," she said. "They need a workable winter." "Mom, every time you step aside for a night, people call it your night off. They don't call it my rehearsal." There was truth in that. Claire had assisted me for 4 years. She had taken attendance, coached entrances, written rehearsal notes, and answered Sunday messages when I was tired. Some of that work had been compensated by a small, seasonal stipend. Some of it had drifted into the dangerous family category called helping, where nobody wrote down what was asked, and everyone remembered the amount differently. I should have made her role clearer. I should have insisted the board evaluate her work directly, instead of letting praise come through me. My failure helped create her resentment. It did not give her my resignation. Riverbend's handbook was only 9 pages long. On the last page was a paragraph we had added after a difficult leadership change years before. Current season responsibilities would be completed under the approved plan. Before an interim artistic leader was named, the board would invite confidential feedback from active singers. Claire knew that paragraph. She also knew the board had not begun the process. Back in the rehearsal hall, I gave everyone a 10-minute break. Claire followed me into the hallway and shut the cafeteria door behind us. "You made it sound like I forged your name," she said. "You printed a farewell I did not approve." "Because if we announce another patchwork year, the chorus keeps leaning on you. The board keeps postponing. I keep doing the job without the name." "Then ask them to name the job you are doing." I did. Denise said they would discuss it after the anniversary. That is not the same as no. It is when you're standing in the room. I looked through the small wired glass window in the door. People were talking in pairs, but several were watching the hallway. "Send a correction tonight," I said. "Say the farewell language was premature. Say next season remains undecided." Claire folded her arms. 400 programs are already printed. That number struck harder than the announcement. A draft can be a mistake. 400 copies require multiple moments in which a person sees the mistake and keeps going. And the other 400? Queued tomorrow. Stop them. The deposit is paid. The deposit is not permission. Her mouth tightened. 2 donors have already seen the page. Do you understand what changing it makes me look like? I did understand. For most of Claire's childhood, I had corrected her privately and praised her publicly. When she forgot a school form, I drove it over without telling anyone. When she missed a college audition deadline, I called the office and asked whether the website had been confusing. When her marriage ended, I let relatives believe the move home had been my idea because she could not bear their questions. I had called all of that protection. Standing in the hallway, I could see what it had also taught her. That embarrassment was an emergency her mother would absorb. Frank had seen that pattern before I did. When Claire was 30 and had forgotten to confirm musicians for a cousin's wedding, I spent a whole Friday making calls while she drove in from another state. That evening, Frank asked why I had not let her explain the problem herself. "Because the wedding is tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow is always how she gets today from you." I was angry with him for saying it. Then the wedding happened, the musicians arrived, and Claire thanked me with such exhausted love that I called the rescue worthwhile. Frank had not asked me to stop helping. He had asked me to notice when my help removed the part of a mistake that taught the next choice. After he died, There was no one at my kitchen table who remembered that distinction for me. I had kept rescuing Claire from small embarrassments, and she had learned to build plans whose first defense was how embarrassing they would be to undo. None of that made her dishonest by nature. It made this particular dishonesty feel survivable to her. She believed I would protest in private, correct the rough edges, and ultimately protect the public result. In her version of the evening, my love was the final approval she had not bothered to obtain. "It makes you look like someone who announced more than she had authority to announce," I said. "You can still look like someone who corrected it." "And if I don't, then I will." Mateo opened the door just enough to put his face through. "I can send everyone home, Ruth." I almost said yes. Canceling would have felt like action. It also would have punished 80 people for 2 Belle's failure to speak plainly. "No," I said. "We rehearsed the music that was approved. No farewell staging tonight." Claire gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "So you still get the podium?" "For the season I agreed to complete." We went back inside. I conducted for another hour and 20 minutes. Claire sat in the front row, marking nothing. When we reached the piece she had been assigned to conduct, I stepped down and handed her the baton. She looked surprised. "The piece is yours," I said. She led it well. That mattered. I will not make her smaller in the telling just because she tried to make me disappear. Claire had a sure ear for balance and a gift for showing a tired singer exactly where to breathe. Her mistake was not that she lacked ability. It was that she wanted certainty badly enough to manufacture consent. After rehearsal, Mateo waited until the last singer had left. "Do you want me to tell Denise what happened?" he asked. "Tell her what you observed if she asks. Don't tell her what I want." "What do you want?" I stared at the stacks of programs on the side table. "Tonight, I want page 3 to catch fire without damaging the building." He smiled, but only briefly. I drove home and emailed Denise Harper, our board chair. I kept it to 3 sentences. The concert was still on. The farewell and succession statements were not authorized. I needed the second print batch paused. Denise called before I had taken off my coat. She had sung alto with Riverbend for 19 years and chaired the board with the calm of someone who had spent her career supervising a county payroll office. She did not gasp or tell me everything would be fine. "Did you resign in writing?" she asked. "No." "Did the board vote on Claire for next season?" "Not to my knowledge." "It did not. The printer opens at 8. I can stop the second batch." "What about the first?" "We paid for paper and ink. We cannot unprint it. We can hold it and approve a corrected insert tomorrow." That was the whole printing procedure. It took less than a minute. Human beings had made the problem. Stationery was not going to solve it. Denise asked whether I wanted Claire removed from Thursday's rehearsal. "No," I said. The answer came quickly, then frightened me. "Are you sure?" "She has an assigned piece." Removing her before anyone hears from the singers would be another person deciding the outcome alone. That may cost you. I know. I did not know. Not fully. Claire came to my house the next morning. She had her own key, as she had since her divorce, and she let herself in while I was making coffee. "You called Denise." "I emailed Denise, before calling me again. I asked you to stop the second batch." She stood beside the kitchen table where we had made the winter plan. "I have spent 4 years waiting for you to say I am ready. You are ready to be considered." "That is exactly how you talk when you mean no." I poured coffee into one mug, then another. She did not take hers. "Claire, I should have asked the board to define your work sooner. I let you do too much under the word help. That was unfair." Her eyes filled, and for 1 second I thought an apology had reached the part of her that still wanted repair more than victory. Then she said, "So fix it. Tell them the announcement was yours." There it was. My admission had not become a bridge. She was trying to use it as a signature. No. You just admitted you kept me waiting. I admitted what I did. I will not admit what I did not do. She picked up the unused mug and set it down harder than necessary. Do you know how many Sundays I answered messages while you were at lunch? How many arrangements I corrected? How many singers call me only after you don't answer? Make that list. Give it to the board. Ask to be paid for the work and evaluated on it. And let them put me beside 3 strangers in an open search. At last, the fear beneath the efficiency was visible. Claire was not afraid that she could not conduct. She was afraid that if people were allowed to choose, they might not choose her. Yes, I said, if that is the process, you let them choose. She stared at me for a long time. You taught me not to wait for a room to be ready, she said. I taught you to prepare the room. I did not teach you to lock everyone else out. It was the kind of sentence that sounds polished when remembered. In the moment, my voice broke in the middle and neither of us looked wise. Thursday's rehearsal began without the gold program. I explained only what had changed. The concert music remained, the farewell tableau was optional, and no musical assignment depended on participating in it. I put a sheet on the side table for anyone who still wished to join the tribute. I did not call it a ballot. It had nothing to do with choosing a director. It simply asked adults whether they wanted to stand, speak, or hand me flowers in a scene built around a decision I had not made. 11 people signed. Claire looked at the sheet and said, most of them probably didn't see it. I announced it twice. They don't know what it means for the program. It means 11 people opted in. It makes the anniversary look empty. From the bass section, Harold Kim said, "The music is not empty." Harold was a retired mechanic who rarely spoke unless a tempo was too fast or a folding chair was unsafe. He did not look at me when he said it. He looked at his score. That mattered more than a speech of support. At the other end of the room, Gerald did sign the tribute sheet. I noticed his name because he had questioned Claire in the first rehearsal. During the break, he came to me with his reading glasses still in his hand. My signing that does not mean I think you resigned, he said. I understand. My wife and I were in the second Riverbend season. I want to say thank you whether you stay or go. Then you should. Claire says the tableau only works if we all stand. Then the tableau does not work. He considered that, folded his glasses, and returned to his seat without removing his name. That was the first independent choice I had to protect, even though it made the room look less united around me. Gerald could reject Claire's announcement and still want to honor me. Nina could refuse the staging and keep her solo. Harold could dislike the whole idea without signing a statement. If I reduced those positions to support and opposition, I would be conducting people after the music had stopped. We started the first piece. 15 minutes later, Claire stopped Nina before her solo entrance. You need to be on the left riser for the transition, she said. Nina glanced at me. For the farewell? For continuity. I didn't sign the sheet. Claire's voice stayed pleasant. Then we may need Elena on the solo. She is already in position. The room became very still. This was the moment Claire later called a misunderstanding. It was not. She had made the choice legible in front of everyone. I stepped off the podium. Nina's solo was assigned in June, I said. She keeps it. If moving from the center takes 6 seconds, Matteo will give us 6 seconds. Matteo played the transition. It took 5. Claire crossed to me during the next water break. You undercut me. I corrected a condition that was never approved. You keep saying approved as if a handbook can conduct. It cannot. Neither can pressure. Around us, people made small decisions. Harold moved the tribute sheet away from the music sign-in so no one could confuse them. Nina asked Elena whether she wanted to share the solo for musical reasons, and Elena said no, It belonged with Nina's voice. Priya Shah, one of our two tenor section representatives, wrote something on her phone and walked to Denise. Gerald Moss, who had previously told me Claire deserved her chance, asked Claire whether she would have changed the solo if Nina had agreed to the tableau. Claire did not answer him. The remaining requests did not arrive as a group. Harold waited until rehearsal ended and asked Denise whether future assignments would be separated from leadership feedback. Elena emailed from her car because she did not want Nina to think she was speaking on her behalf. Thomas Reed, the baritone representative, said he thought Claire was the strongest musical candidate, but still wanted the process followed. June Park asked for a way to comment without either Belle seeing her words. The sixth request came from Gerald, who left his name on the tribute sheet and objected to the condition placed on Nina's solo. No one gathered in a heroic semicircle. No one gave a speech. By the end of the break, 6 section representatives had separately asked Denise for the confidential feedback promised in the handbook. Denise told Claire and me at the same time, "Neither of you will address that process," she said. "The board will hear what singers choose to say." Claire's face went pale. "You are letting them vote based on one awkward rehearsal?" "They are not voting tonight," Denise said. "They are asking to be consulted before next season." Because my mother staged this. That hurt more than the program. A part of me still believed that if I behaved perfectly, Claire would be forced to recognize the difference between a boundary and an attack. I had to let that hope go before I could finish the story honestly. The board met for 40 minutes the next evening in the library's small conference room. I will not make those 40 minutes sound grand. There were paper cups, a humming vent, and one board member who had brought the wrong agenda. The relevant discussion was simple. The concert had an approved conductor, me. Claire had one approved piece. The succession language had not been approved. 6 representatives had asked for the consultation already described in our handbook. One board member, Paul, worried that changing the program would embarrass the donors. "More than printing a false retirement?" Denise asked. Paul rubbed his forehead. "No, differently." That was fair. Correction has a cost even when it is right. The board voted to withdraw the farewell page, proceed with the musical program, and hold confidential singer feedback before considering an interim leader. Then Denise looked at me. "That process applies to you too, Ruth. No one is promising that reducing your duties means you keep the title." My throat tightened. I had been so focused on stopping Claire's certainty that I had not stood fully inside my own uncertainty. A fair process might reject her. It might also conclude that Riverbend needed an entirely new beginning. "I understand," I said. "Do you?" I looked at Claire. She was watching me with something close to hope, as though fear might send me back into the arrangement she had printed. "Yes," I said. "I vote for the process." The motion passed. Claire pushed her chair back, then stopped before standing. "Suppose the feedback says people want Mom," she said. "Does she just keep everything?" Denise answered before I could. "The feedback does not award property. It helps us understand what the chorus needs. We still define a role, invite candidates, and make a decision. And suppose they want me? Then the same process protects that answer." Claire looked down at the closed black binder in front of her. She had prepared tabs for budget, repertoire, recruitment, and publicity. I knew because I had taught her to tab a proposal. Every page might have been excellent. None of them transformed a proposed future into a present right. For a moment, I wanted to reach across the table and tell everyone about the things she did well. The summer workshop she redesigned when attendance fell. The shy new alto she had kept from quitting. The way she heard fatigue before a section went flat. Then I understood that praising her at that exact moment would be another form of intervention. It would ask the room to take care of my daughter because I could not bear watching her sit with uncertainty. I kept my hands around my paper cup. In the parking lot, Priya and Gerald were waiting. Harold sat in his truck nearby, not quite waiting and not quite leaving. Priya held out a page. We drafted a statement asking the board to remove Claire now. I did not take it. Describe what happened to you, I said. Do not remove her for me. Gerald frowned. She tried to remove you. Then we know what choosing for someone looks like. You want us to do nothing? No. I want you to say what you saw and what kind of leader you will sing for. I do not want your answer to belong to me. Priya lowered the paper. That is a harder statement. It should be. Matteo found me before I reached my car. Musically, we can do the original program, he said. No tribute, no added speeches. Claire's piece stays where it is. Thank you. Some people want to replace the farewell with a tribute to you that Claire is not invited to. No. I told them you would say that. Then why ask? Because telling them what you would say is not the same as letting you say it. That was why Matteo had lasted 22 years beside a succession of soloists, board chairs, and anxious conductors. He knew the moral difference between prediction and permission. The next Wednesday, instead of an extra rehearsal, I went to a beginner pottery class at the Community Arts Building. I had registered 2 months earlier and postponed twice. My husband Frank used to say I could turn an empty evening into a committee before dinner. After he died, the chorus had filled more and more of those evenings, partly because the work mattered and partly because a room of voices was easier than a quiet house. The pottery wheel did not care how long I had conducted. My first bowl leaned so far left that the instructor, a woman named Camille, asked whether I wanted to call it a pitcher. It does appear to be leaving, I said. She showed me how to center the clay again. There were 7 adults in the class. A man named Wesley made neat cylinders and apologized every time one collapsed. 2 sisters at the next wheel argued cheerfully about whose apron had gone missing. Camille moved among us without rescuing anyone too soon. She would place a finger near the clay and ask, "Do you feel where it is pulling?" Then she waited. Waiting looked different from neglect when the person beside you still owned the work. I pressed too hard and cut my bowl nearly in half. My first instinct was to hide the ruined side from Camille. The impulse made me laugh so suddenly that Wesley looked over. "Good news?" he asked. "Recognition," I said. Camille gave me another piece of clay. She did not call the first one a learning experience. She scraped it from the wheel and let the plain loss be enough. I liked her for that. My phone buzzed twice in my bag. For the first time in years, I let a rehearsal question wait until class ended. When I checked it, Claire had sent a proposed compromise. "Keep farewell to our founder," she had written. "Remove the word retirement. I can say you are passing the music forward." I called her. "Passing it to whom?" I asked. There was a pause. "You know what it means." "Yes, that is why I won't say it." "So you want to stand there and tell 800 people I lied?" "I want to tell them I did not resign." "Same thing." "No, Claire. They only become the same thing if you refuse to correct it yourself." Our final conversation before the concert happened in the empty auditorium during sound check. Without an audience, the rows of seats looked less like judgment and more like carpentry. Claire stood at the stage edge. "I gave up other work for Riverbend," she said. "Every time someone asked when I would lead, you said someday." I should not have said someday. I should have helped make your work visible and let the board answer. You could answer now. I can say you have ability. I can say you worked hard. I cannot say that 80 people owe you leadership because I failed to define your job. She looked toward the empty balcony. If they open the search, I might lose. Yes. She laughed once without humor. At least you are honest now. I hope I am. Were you ever going to leave? That question deserved more than defense. I was going to change, I said. I wanted fewer rehearsals. I wanted evenings that did not belong to the next concert. Maybe I held the center too tightly because I knew how to be useful there. but leaving one part of the work is not the same as giving you the rest." She wiped beneath one eye with the side of her finger. "Introduce me Saturday," she said. "Tell them I'm the future, even if you won't say when. I will introduce the piece you prepared." "Not me?" "I will say your name and your role. I will not promise them your future." "Then I don't know what we are after Saturday." Neither did I.
"After Saturday," I said, "we are a mother and daughter who will need a conversation without a program in our hands. But you no longer have a key to my house while every private talk becomes leverage at rehearsal." I held out my palm. She stared at it, then removed the brass key from her ring. When she placed it in my hand, her fingers were cold. Concert night arrived with hard rain. People shook umbrellas in the lobby and read the corrected inserts under the program lamps. The insert did not explain our family. It listed the approved music, thanked all current leaders, and stated that next season's artistic team would be selected after singer consultation. The first 400 programs stayed boxed in the office. We lost the printing cost. I was glad there was a cost. Otherwise, the truth would have arrived looking too easy. Backstage, Nina touched my sleeve. "I'm still center for the solo?" "You are." "And Claire still conducts the fourth piece?" "She does." Nina nodded. "Good." That one word steadied me. Not because she was on my side, because she was refusing the idea that fairness required Claire to be humiliated in return. We walked on stage. The first half was not perfect. A bass entrance came early. The altos recovered a phrase one beat late. During the second piece, rain struck the roof hard enough that Matteo leaned into the keys. It was still ours. From the podium, I could see the individual choices that had brought people there. Gerald stood in the tribute group before the concert and said his private thank you while the audience was still in the lobby. Then he took his regular place among the tenors. Nina wore the same dark blue scarf she always wore for a solo, not the gold one Claire had selected for the tableau. Elena turned Nina's music page because they had chosen cooperation, without pretending the disputed assignment had never happened. Harold checked the repaired rail, sat down, and offered no opinion on anybody's future. Their differences did not weaken the performance. They made it honest. Claire and I passed each other twice in the wings. The first time she looked beyond me. The second time she said, "The basses need your cutoff higher in the third phrase." She was right. "Thank you," I said. For half a second we were doing the work we had once loved doing together. Then the stage manager gave the signal, and the moment closed. I did not use it as evidence that everything between us was repairable. A useful sentence is not an apology. It is still useful. When Claire came out for the fourth piece, I introduced her exactly as promised. Our assistant conductor, Claire Bell, prepared this work with us. She took the podium. For one breath she looked at me, then she conducted. Her opening tempo was better than mine would have been. The middle section opened with patience. When the final chord ended, the audience applauded her, and I joined them. Ability was never the charge against her. At the end of the concert, Denise placed a microphone at center stage. The old program had called for flowers, photographs, and Claire's succession announcement. Now there was only a microphone and whatever truth I could carry to it. I could feel Claire behind my left shoulder. I could feel 80 singers waiting without knowing whether I would make them witnesses to a family indictment. I held the microphone with both hands. "Thank you for 40 years of music," I said. "The program first prepared for tonight described this as my farewell. It is not. I did ask for fewer winter duties next season, and I should have made that request more clearly. I did not resign, and no next director had been chosen." The room was so quiet that I heard someone lower a camera. "Riverbend should choose its next season by listening directly to the people who must make it together. I will not make that choice for them tonight." I handed the microphone to Denise. I did not name Claire. I did not nominate myself. I did not ask for applause. Denise said, "The board will begin confidential singer consultation in 2 weeks. Tonight, we will finish the music we promised." That was all. The singers stood for the last piece, not for a tribute, not for me, for the music already in their folders. Matteo gave the pitch. I raised my hands and 80 people breathed together. Afterward, the lobby filled with the usual disorder of wet coats, flowers, and people trying to say important things before the parking lot emptied. Some audience members told me they were sorry. Some said they had not understood the insert. One man told me the basses had never sounded better, which was untrue but kind. Claire waited by the loading door. "Tell Denise it was a misunderstanding," she said. "Tell her we settled it." Did we? You got the program changed. That was not the whole problem. I apologized. You asked me to change the word retirement while keeping the announcement.
She looked away. Denise approached carrying the black succession binder Claire had assembled. "The appointment remains paused," she said. "Consultation begins in 2 weeks. Ruth, that means your regular role is under review too." "I know." Claire looked from Denise to me. "You would rather let a stranger take it?" "I would rather let people choose." I picked up my own score box. Claire had 3 binders, a garment bag, and the flowers that had been intended for the farewell. My old habit told me to take half. I did not. "Do you need a cart?" I asked. "No." I left her the cart anyway. Then I walked into the rain carrying only what belonged to me. Justice did not feel warm that night. It felt like turning the key in my own front door and hearing no second key answer from the other side. For 2 weeks, I did not speak to any singer about the consultation. When people tried, I asked them to tell Denise. Matteo sent factual rehearsal notes to everyone, not private summaries to me. Claire submitted her work record. I submitted mine, including the winter duties I no longer wanted. Silence during those 2 weeks was not peaceful. I woke at 5 on the first Wednesday with a full rehearsal plan forming in my head. By breakfast, I had revised an entrance no one had asked me to revise. At noon, I opened my email to send it to Matteo, then closed the message. That evening, I drove past the cafeteria on my way to pottery. Light showed through the tall windows. I could make out people moving risers. I parked across the street for nearly a minute. There was no rule preventing me from going in. If I entered, people would make room. Someone would ask what I thought. I could tell myself I was only checking that the rail Harold repaired had held. Then Priya came out carrying a recycling bag. She did not see me. She took it to the bin, went back inside, and the rehearsal continued. I drove on. At pottery, my clay was too dry because I had left the bag open. Camille showed me how to wedge it with softer clay rather than throw it away. That small task held my attention for 15 minutes. When I looked at the clock, rehearsal had already started without me. The board did not appoint either of us. They named a 3-person interim team for 1 season. Matteo for musical continuity, Priya for section coordination, and an outside conductor for 2 major programs. Then they opened a full search. Claire sent me one message after the announcement. "I hope you are happy." I did not answer that sentence because happiness was not what I had asked the board to produce. I grieved anyway. I grieved the regular Wednesday walk from the piano to the podium. I grieved the habit of turning toward Claire whenever the altos needed a second pair of ears. I even grieved the arguments we would no longer have in the parking lot about whether a phrase needed more air or less volume. Giving up control did not reveal that I had secretly wanted nothing. It revealed how much I had wanted, and how much of my identity had been tied to being the person who could answer. The interim team made decisions I would not have made. They moved section practice to Monday once a month. They chose a spring piece I considered too sentimental. They stopped printing full rehearsal calendars and used an online schedule that Harold disliked. Riverbend did not become perfect when it stopped being mine to steer. It became responsible for its own mistakes. 3 months after the concert, my Wednesday bowl still leaned slightly left, but it could hold soup. Camille no longer hovered when I centered the clay. I knew the names of 6 people who had never heard me conduct and did not need me to. That was the first proof my life had changed. On rehearsal night, I sometimes forgot to check the rehearsal clock. The second proof came a month later. Claire emailed asking for the old arrangement files stored in my study.
She added that it would be easiest if I returned her keys so she could collect them while I was out. I packed the files in 2 archive boxes and delivered them to Denise. Then I wrote to Claire, "The files are with the board. I am willing to meet for coffee when we can speak as family without asking the other person to settle a chorus decision. The key will stay with me." Her answer came the next day, "Not yet." I believed her. I also believed myself when I did not chase her. At Christmas, she mailed a card without a note. I put it on the mantel for the week, then stored it with the other cards. I did not read reconciliation into the return address. I did not read rejection into the lack of a message. In February, she asked whether I would meet for coffee. We chose a place neither of us used regularly and stayed 40 minutes. Claire said, "I still think the chorus needed a transition." It did. "I think you would have postponed it." You may be right. But I should not have printed your answer. It was the first apology she had given that named her action instead of her intention. "No," I said, "you should not have." She waited, perhaps for me to say it was all right. I let the sentence remain true. We did not hug in the parking lot. We agreed that if we met again, neither of us would carry messages between the other and the board. It was one conversation, not a repaired relationship. That was enough for that day. 6 months after the anniversary, Riverbend invited me to guest conduct one piece at a spring rehearsal. The invitation came in writing. It named the date, the music, the rehearsal time, and the end of my responsibility. I accepted. When I walked into the old cafeteria, Harold was tightening a chair screw. Nina was laughing with Elena over a marked breath. Priya held the attendance clipboard. Matteo greeted me, then continued the conversation he had already been having. No one had frozen in my absence. I conducted the piece. We worked one difficult entrance until it was clean. When my allotted time ended, I closed my score and sat in the back row. The interim conductor stepped up for the next work. I heard a ragged breath in the tenors and nearly lifted my hand from habit. I lowered it to my lap. The conductor gave the entrance. The tenors watched. The altos listened across the aisle. Matteo waited exactly long enough. The next note began without my cue.